Welcome to Wednesdays with Witcher for this beautiful October 6th day. We are already halfway, more than halfway technically, through Family History Month. And gosh, where has the year gone? Where has the month gone? Where has this week gone? I think that's kind of a bit of advice that we can kind of embrace, that time doesn't stop for anyone or anything. It continues to march on. So if we want to make meaningful progress in finding our family stories, we want to make meaningful progress in breaking down those brick walls, I think we need to be intentional with our time, right? Intentional with carving some time, making some time to do family history. Here comes a technical word here, as you all might guess, stuff, right? Family history stuff. Because time will continue to move on. So again, welcome. We're at the top of the hour. I'm going to get started by turning off my camera, sharing screen, and really begin to have kind of a one-sided conversation, if you will, about what I think is a really, really important subject. And some of us may have tired of hearing about it, but I hope you'll hang with me to just see if we can't muse out together some new way of thinking about finding all of our stories, right? So let's get started. Here's the title slide, Tips for Doing Reasonably Exhaustive Research. Why would I pick that for Family History Month, and who really cares? I don't know, if you're a contrarian like me, you may not really widely embrace lots of standards and rules and regulations. I tend to be a contrarian myself, so I too push back against, well, this is the way you have to do it. These are what you have to do. You must follow these rules. I get it. But sometimes standards and rules really are more like practices, best practices, things that will help us, regardless of whether we're contrarian or not, help us achieve our goals. I so strongly believe that you and I, as family historians, as genealogists, we have so much data available to us in such convenient forms these days that we'll be tempted to rush through things. Oh my gosh, time is going by so quickly. I need to rush through this. I need to leapfrog through the generations and just pick up enough information that I can go back yet another generation. We find that strategy knocking at our door, pulling at our clocks, tugging at our minds, saying, there's no way we're going to get through this unless we do it in a hurry. Well, ironically, I have found in my research, I have found in the research of patrons we have helped here in the Genealogy Center, and family members and genealogists all over the country, embracing that let's do it quickly strategy typically costs us more than we think and leads to many, many, many brick walls. So reasonably exhaustive research, for those of you who might have already guessed and known days, weeks, months, years ago, it's number one in the Genealogical Proof Standard. And you might say, so what? Well, I think it's number one, and I particularly embrace that of the 5 steps, parts of the Genealogical Proof Standard, because it is so impactful in our research. It's so meaningful to how we do research. So I want to talk, it will seem a little meandering, but I hope to guide us through why this is important and how we can do it. It doesn't have to seem stuffy. It doesn't have to seem academic. It doesn't have to seem onerous or burdensome. It's more of a mindset. It's more of a strategy for how we can find our family stories. And our family stories, just as a small aside, are so meaningful, so powerful. That's why we do family history, right? Because we want to find our family stories, we want to preserve them, and we want them presented and presentable to others, others in our family, others who lived in the same towns and villages, others who worshiped in the same houses of worship. We want our stories known, and we want them, at the end of the day, to be our stories, not something we stumbled upon and we just put together in a slapdash fashion. We want them to be the true stories of our families. We want the pictures and documents and the reasoning behind how we wove together our family story so that we can really embrace it, own it, and proclaim it as our family story. And that's why I think reasonably exhaustive research should be embraced. And it's big. Oh my goodness, it's big. You'll hear me say this phrase a couple of times while we spend moments together this afternoon. It's an insomnia buster. It's an insomnia buster. What I mean by that is when you're really tired, your mind's a little numb, or you can't sleep for some reason, go to one of the sites we're going to look at and just take time to look around. Or as many of you have heard me say, take time to play. Play with the site, see what all it has to offer, right? So let's move. When we're talking about reasonably exhaustive research, you must guess and you must know by now that means we need to find all the data we can, all the information we can for our ancestors and potential ancestors. And many people have said, okay, Curt, yep, got it. But really, what do you mean? Like all census records, all records on Ancestry, all records online, all records available in big repositories. And I always smile and I say, no, I mean all the records you can possibly find. At RootStech last year, the CEO of Family Search, he was asked that question a lot as well regarding which records around the world they are interested in digitizing and making available. And he responded, well, all of them. And people continue to press him on, well, no, really, what's like your target set? What do you really want to have at the end of the day? And I remember Steve Rockwood saying in a very emphatic and poignant and meaningful way during his keynote, all means all. And you might think, okay, Curt, that's a little pedestrian. Call it pedestrian or not, it's really, really powerful and it should direct us. So which documents that evidence our ancestors' lives should we try to find? All. Which parts of history that shine a light on what our ancestors may have experienced that help us understand the lives they lived and then lead us to other documents and other sources of information? Which ones? All. So I'm going to channel Steve Rockwood this afternoon. All means all. And that's a strategy I'm going to try to put out before us today, lay out before us, because all means all, right? So when we're looking at all means all, trying to find all the information that's available, I think we need to change our underlying strategy. Maybe for most of us, the change in our underlying strategy is we actually have a strategy rather than doing the Christopher Columbus approach to things. Find a website, land on it, and search for a while. Find another website, land on it, and search for a while. Maybe we should really have a strategy. Or maybe we have a strategy and we should kind of enhance it with these particular points. Number one, we should have an inquisitive or an investigative mindset. What do I mean by that? I mean, when you find a document evidencing your ancestor's life, pause a moment and say to yourself or out loud to anyone who's listening, what does this document tell me? And what does this document not tell me? Right? Sometimes we just make assumptions that birth records and baptismal records, the same thing, and death records and tombstone records and cemetery records and obituaries. Well, they're all just death records. Well, no, not exactly. An investigative mindset also means, didn't think he, she would be buried here. I didn't know he, she went to that school, matriculated from this educational institution. Well, why? So have an investigative mindset. Do a lot of questioning. Don't just look, grab a name, plug it into your ancestor chart, and move on. I think that's pretty critical. Second point, do the history. This has been a mantra of mine for decades. We're not just doing family history. We're doing ancestral research and historical research married together. That's why it's called family history. We should be committed to doing the history. So wherever we find an ancestor, we should press pause at least a couple of times to say, what's going on in this neighborhood, this town, this county, this region, and the country at this time? And you might be shaking your head wildly. No, no, Curt, you're all wrong. There's no way in Hades I have time to do that. Well, the time you don't commit to doing the history is the time that you'll spend later because you missed the documents. And doing the history sets a really important context for us. And context is king many times in our research. So please do the history. What do I mean by that? More than occasionally, there is a patron in the Genealogy Center with a question having to do something with the decade between 1870 and 1860. And for the life of the patron, he can't figure out what might have been going on in the country between 1870 and 1860 that might have caused people to lose property, lose family members, migrate. This little skirmish called the Civil War that had a huge impact on every single community. And after the war, there was a post-war migration patterns, people coming back home, people moving on, African Americans moving north, all kinds of things going on. Do the history. It's so very important. I have kin from Southern Indiana, Orange County, DuBois County, Daviess County, for multiple generations. It's really informative. Why would these people come all the way across the Great Pond from Germany, travel halfway across the continent to Cincinnati, springboard from Cincinnati into Southern Indiana? There must be something big, shining, large, bustling metropolis in Southern Indiana. No, not so much. All due respect to my Southern Indiana kin. What drew them to Indiana? Doing the history is so very important, and studies of the history of those communities leads us directly back to places in the old country where those families come from. Doing the history helped me put the pieces together to know where in Germany. And isn't that the quest for many of us? Working, researching our families to get back to the waters, and then across the Great Pond to the old country. That is critical. Doing the history, so extremely vital in doing reasonably exhaustive research. We have to know the context. We've heard about fans so many times, haven't we? Some of you, some of us, may be sick to death of hearing about fans. I'm so tired of hearing about fans. Well, let's remember what it means, of course. Friends, associates, and neighbors. Let's embrace it, correct? Let's embrace it. So when we find someone on a census record, shouldn't we look around and see who's living around that person? If we find someone on a tax record, shouldn't we look around and see if there are other family members, other people that we have found on plat maps, we have found in township enumerations listed there as well? Friends, associates, and neighbors. We'll have a slide about this in just another moment or two, kind of pointing a finer light, a brighter or sharper light on friends, associates, and neighbors. I observe in the Genealogy Center, and I watch others not do this persistently. We say, yeah, friends. Yep. We know all about that fan stuff. That's cool. That's a great strategy. And then we chuckle to ourselves as we walk away and don't do it. Let's embrace that. That helps us do reasonably exhaustive research. A concept that many of you probably haven't heard. I worked with a good colleague, Lauren Pechtel, at the Indiana Historical Society. We did a couple presentations in the past on researching in 4D. That's kind of like doing the history on steroids, if you will, embracing fans on steroids. That's almost like, and hope you're all sitting down because this may sound like heresy to some of you. It's almost like parking, putting on the sideline, pressing pause on doing any family history research and just research the time period in the context of the geography. So using my father as an example, he was a crypto agent in the occupation forces in Japan after World War II. And so What was Japan like after World War II? What did crypto agents do? What did coding and decoding messages do? And how did they do that? What was life like in Japan? What would a person who had been there a year, what would they have done? How did they communicate with loved ones back home? What kind of leave did they get? What kind of music was playing in Japan? What did they eat? If we're really interested in finding our family's stories, right? That's what genealogy, I believe, is all about, finding our family's stories. Then we really need to go beyond the person. So we need to go beyond doing the history, beyond friends, associates, and neighbors, and actually research time periods. What was life like in Civil War POW camps? If we have a record, a service record, some other pension record, some other documentation that our ancestors served in a regiment in the Civil War, was captured and did time, served, lived in a POW camp, researching in 4D means you pause on finding specifics about your ancestor for a moment and try to look at letters and diaries and reports of other people, totally unrelated to your family, to really understand what was life like for someone in a prisoner of war camp. What was life like when there wasn't enough supplies? What was life like behind enemy lines? There's so much good there, and it takes time, but it helps us find all the information we possibly can. We can also change our underlying strategy by embracing what we talked about last week. I'm not going to reprise that whole time we spent together last week, but how we use publications, really important. And I have one slide to, again, shine a finer light on that. And let's change our underlying strategy to commit to finding all the stuff, right? So our underlying strategy has to embrace a good part of all of these. Investigative mindset, doing the history, embracing fans, trying something different, researching in 4D, researching the time in a geographic context where our ancestors lived, the time period, review how we use publications, and commit to finding everything. So we've all heard of the big why. I have a little pun here. It's early on in the presentation. We heard about the big why, to research father's DNA, paternal DNA. For us to have an investigative mindset, we need a different kind of big why, and it's right on your screen. We need to ask a lot of why questions, literally a lot of why questions. Let's take a quicker look. So this is just part of a list of questions you could have about an ancestor in the mid-19th century, say on the 1850 census. Who is he? Well, that's kind of a duh question, we might think, but if you ask that question, who is he, that leads your mind to begin to explore, well, really, who is he? Well, he's a 27-year-old. He has X acres of farm. He's married. He has one kid. He's had his own kid. What town is he living in? Why is he there? How did he get there? What neighborhood or area is he living in? Who else is living with him? What's he doing? Where is he working? Where does he worship? How does he spend his time? In what way does he contribute to the community? And where are all the documents that evidence this? I think an investigative mindset has the big why. Every time you find someone on a document, look for friends, associates, and neighbors on that document. Look for the history, do the history, like the context of that document. Then also ask yourself why. And some of the answers may initially be pretty common duh type of answers, right? Well, here's a baptismal certificate. Why? Why does he have a baptismal certificate? Well, the answer to the why is there a baptismal certificate for this person, again, is pretty pedestrian. It's like, well, because he got baptized, because she got baptized. Well, but why did they do that? Well, again, pretty pedestrian. Their families were member of churches. This was part of their faith tradition, et cetera, et cetera. And you can begin to, again, challenge yourself to be a high-level family history detective, finding all the information. I know that might be a little circuitous way to talk about this, but I wanted to give a couple of examples of what an investigative mindset means. Ask a lot of questions. Don't just pick up a piece of evidence and put it on your chart. Ask, like, what does everything mean? Do I understand everything on this document? Why was this document created? Why are these people on the document? Why is the primary person being baptized, the person who died, etc.? Why are they on this document? Doing the history. We could spend many moments with this, moments that we don't have, but if we're interested in really getting at least, and I'm going to say at least, and we should probably do more, at least a thumbnail idea of what the history is in a particular local area, state, and national area, I would commend to you using what I call this information grid, if you will. Types of materials in 3 very broad categories are down the left-hand side. Geographic locations are along the top. Published materials, those like books, magazines, serials, journals. If we're looking at the local level, it's public libraries. State level, state libraries. National level, the Library of Congress and other major libraries. That makes sense. How often do we do that? How often do you go online and look at the catalogs of public libraries, no matter how small the community or large, state libraries in every state, if not a state library, then a state historical society. And then the Library of Congress and other major libraries like Allen County, like Family Search, like Clayton and Houston, like many other large libraries around the country. Official or governmental publications, this also makes sense, right? At the local level, it's county courthouses, and some of those counties have archives, county archives to go with the courthouses. At the state level, it's state archives. At the national level, it's national archives. Again, I ask, do we religiously go to the web pages, the catalogs, the online calendars of these archives and look for not just our ancestor, but records about their occupation, their military engagement, and other data about where they're living and what they're doing? Again, why fans and doing the history is so important. Because in a lot of these catalogs, looking up Witcher or Englert or Grommelsbacher or Shook, my family names, that's not going to get me a whole lot, but I'm looking for Jasper, and I'm looking at 417 East 14th Street in Jasper, and I'm looking for Du Bois County. I'm looking for Jasper as it relates to Ferdinand, as it relates to Huntingburg. That's kind of my research triangle there in Du Bois County. So knowing those geographic locations, then I can look in county archives and state archives and national archives. And then the last category along the bottom, unpublished materials, those are letters, diaries, company record books, manuscripts, photographs. Who's going to have those? At the local level, historical societies. At the state level, historical societies. Local historical societies, county historical societies, state historical societies. And then at the national level, what I call special focus collections and organizations. Railroad museums, railroad libraries have railroad records. And again, your large organizations. Let's commit to doing the history by visiting virtually on their pretty robust websites, looking for online catalogs, finding aids, calendars that we can begin to understand what records we might want to access in these various repositories. This is how you really can begin to do the history. Embracing fans, I promised you a slide. Why do we really care about fans? Well, I think these 3 bullet points, right? Their lives touched our ancestors. How do we know? Because they're living next door to them. They're on our ancestors' records. They're worshiping in the same houses of worship. They're part of the same congregations. They're working in the same factories. You get the idea. Friends, associates, and neighbors. They touched our ancestors' lives. That automatically drives us to the second point. Their stories may be our stories, right? So there may be records and information and letters and diaries and who knows what in the stories, in the family stories of the friends, associates, and neighbors of our ancestors that may be our stories. Parts or significant parts may be our stories. And we should look for the intersectionality of those 3 entities with our families. How do friends, associates, and neighbors intersect with our family story? It's amazing what you will find when you just broaden your view. So many times we're just too narrow, just too narrow. Researching in 4D, again, don't have a whole lot of time to commit to that. And some of you may be like ready to click exit or ready to like maybe pour yourself an early afternoon drink or say, this Witcher guy is just off his rocker. Why is he telling me this? Well, because I believe we stumble into or run into a lot of brick walls because we're not thoroughly researching the times of our ancestors and the history that go with those times. So researching in 4D, as I mentioned briefly a moment or two ago, it's kind of pausing on the surname searching and just say, what event did my ancestor participate in, or I believe my ancestor participated in, and then research that event. Again, park our ancestor on the side. My ancestor was assuredly on the frontier. I mean, was always looking for cheap land, was going to clear the land, plant great crops. Okay, so pause the search for the ancestor and say, what did frontier look like in Indiana in this time period? What did frontier look like in Missouri during this time period? What did, you get the idea, right? So researching in 4D says, I'm going to take geography, ethnicity, occupation, religion, and time period, and I'm going to explore those to the degree and in a manner that they intersect with my family's timeline, right? So if I have family in Indiana in the early 1800s, what are some things that I know? Well, I need to pause and increase my knowledge. How do I do that? I say, wow, what was territorial Indiana like? Well, the first state capital was in Corydon. That's by the Ohio River. So it was like down south in Indiana. Why? Well, Indiana wasn't a state until 1816. So anything before 1816 is territorial. And there were far fewer counties because counties just went clear north, almost up to the border of Indiana, Michigan, in some instances, not in every instance. Religion. I'm looking for German Catholics and German Lutherans. Okay, in Indiana during the early 1800s, where were they? What kind of churches do they have? Circuit riders, itinerant ministers, traveling priests? Like, what was the religious landscape in early statehood and territorial Indiana? My ancestor was a farmer. Oh my gosh, how many of us can claim that? Well, what was farming like? Farming in New England looked a lot different than farming in Nebraska or in Indiana or in Kentucky. My ancestor was an immigrant from Poland. Well, where did Polish people settle? Let's not even look for my ancestor from. Let's just look for Polish people. Where did they tend to settle? Where did Swedes tend to settle? Just anywhere they wanted to? Oh my goodness. If we pause and do that 4D research, do that researching the history. If you look on the right side of the slide, Digital Public Library America is what DPLA stands for. What did downtown Memphis look like in the 1910s when my family lived there? That's kind of a 4D type question. What did downtown Jasper look like? What did Jasper itself look like? So we'll have another slide in just a moment to just plow a little further into that with the Digital Public Library of America. So this is what we talked about last week, using publications better. And citation analysis is a big part of that. I told you I wouldn't review last week's, but I had to call out citation analysis. So here we are. We have 2 slides of getting to it all. If we're going to embrace, even close to embrace what Steve Rockwood said, all means all, we have to visit these sites. And again, these are pretty obvious. So you can do a screen capture, however you want to do this, but Family Search, Internet Archive, Allen County Public Library. Yes, I'm biased. I will own that bias. But oh my gosh, these 3 entities give us worlds of information. Are we really exploring for all the information that's available through these entities? Now, I know Internet Archive is having a little bit of a challenge. They've had a data breach and they're working on fixing that, but we can't forget about them because they will be back with the same millions of pieces of information. Periodical Source Index, WorldCat, Nutmuck, and Archive Grid. Those are great indexes to use bad English We can't not use those. We have to use those. There are millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of records in these. So Periodical Source Index, WorldCat, National Union Catalog of Manuscript Collections, and Archive Grid. And then there's this set. Catalog of U.S. Government Publications, Library of Congress, National Archives, Digital Public Library of America, the site that everyone loves to hate, Google, and then all the other licensed databases. Let's pick up our pace a little bit and just take a look at getting to it all, these sites and these sites. We probably have a lifetime and a half worth of work ahead of us to really make all mean all. But let's jump in. So family search, there's so many things we could explore on family search. I commend you to look at their digital library. Did you know that each one of you have a personal library of over 500,000 items? In fact, their website is a little behind because as of midsummer this year, they have over 600,000 resources freely available through the Family Search Digital Library. How can you not use this if you're trying to do reasonably exhaustive research? What are you going to look for? You're going to look for the surname. You're going to look for the churches and other organizations. You're going to look for the geographic locations. You need to look through them all. Look what it says here. Genealogy books, family histories, maps, yearbooks, and more. The and more is local history material. Internet Archive, as I just mentioned, they had a hack that kind of brought them offline. That kind of did bring them offline for now the better part of a week. I grabbed this slide from a presentation I put together about a month ago, so it's relatively accurate. Who knows what their page will look like when they come back? But about a month ago, there were, as you can see where my cursor is, 3.8 million search results, digitized materials in American libraries that are available on Internet Archive. Not all of that's going to be history or family history, but a slice of 3.8 million digitized entities, that's still a lot of history, a lot of family history, a lot of local history, a lot of things to help us do the history, that help us do reasonably exhaustive research. Oh my goodness, how can we not look at the Internet Archive when it's back? So commit to doing that. Genealogy Center, again, I'm pretty biased here, but oh my gosh, if you have any insomnia moments, this is a great website just to play around with. So in the little button here for YouTube, way up here in the thin blue bar, that's a weird looking green. The thin blue bar, there's over 320 really great presentations on YouTube that you can benefit from. And oh my goodness, we have all kinds of free things on our website, including state guides that just give you some, like a small percentage of the books that are in our collection, but they're supposed to be thought generators. They're supposed to be motivational, as in, oh yeah, I should look for this kind of a research guide in Pennsylvania or in whatever other state I am researching in. So there's just a lot of materials. It's sort of like a Cindy's List lineup to various materials in Pennsylvania or other places. We present online a lot of information for our military veterans that isn't in Ancestry or Fold3 or Find My Past or any of the other large information aggregators. They're too small of data sets. Yes, that's what I said. They're too small of data sets for the big information aggregators to really worry about them. So we put a landing place on our website where people can access that information. Over 3 million records and images on this website. So moving on, the Genealogy Center website, we have a lot of family photo albums, scrapbooks, and manuscript collections that are available through our Family Searches link. And then there's the Periodical Source Index. 3.1, almost 3.2 million subject entries to tens of thousands of periodicals across the world. Oh my goodness, you have to use this. It also can be a great insomnia buster, right? Because sometimes it gets it takes some time to get used to a new database. Kind of gets on our nerves when I say, well, how is this set up? And oh my gosh, this doesn't have Boolean operators like I would expect it to, like I want it to, like I'm used to. Well, when life presents you with reality, we need to find a way of leveraging that to our best advantage. So I just commend the periodical source index to you. I did a search on Civil War in Owsley County, Kentucky, came back with, actually not Civil War, but military, came back with 90 entries, a lot of them Civil War, shows you two different publications, the South Fork Country News and Owsley County Then and Now. You can see down here 90 different entries for military just for that county. The periodical source index can be wonderful. I hope that many of you have heard of WorldCat. It's like 10,000 library catalogs all in one. Yes, I know we love to hate library catalogs. I feel I have license to say this as a librarian, as an archivist, right? Library catalogs are not fun. They're not intuitive. They're not Amazon and they're not Google. And I know some amongst my colleagues in the library field don't like it much when people say, well, your catalog isn't as easy as Amazon, isn't as easy as Google. And they kind of wear that as a badge of honor, if you will. I don't. Our catalogs should be like Google, like Amazon. They're not. So what do we as genealogists do? When life gives us lemons, we make the best darn lemonade we can. You've heard me say that before. So how can we ignore WorldCat? 2 billion catalog records from over 10,000 libraries worldwide. So national libraries all across Europe and the British Isles, libraries all across the United States, university, state libraries, local public libraries. This is where you can find out, where you can begin to do reasonably exhaustive research, right? What has been published for Owsley County, Kentucky? What has been published for Stone Mountain, Arkansas? What has been published for a particular geographic area? And you'd be surprised using WorldCat how many different places in your own state might carry the same name, or in the country, or in the world. My goodness, WorldCat, it's another insomnia buster, looking for your surname, the geographic location, the religion, the occupation, the ethnic group. The National Union Catalog of Manuscript Collections, many haven't heard or don't use this if they have heard of it. It's just a great service of the Library of Congress. And I tend to be a pretty harsh critic of the Library of Congress. They should be doing more, much more, and make their stuff more intuitive and more easily accessible. But again, that is what it is. Arguing against reality is a sucker's bet, right? But using NutMuck, which have a nice splash page there on the left-hand side of your screen, you execute a search and you get results that look kind of like the 20th century instead of the 21st century on the right side of your screen. So I did a search for Kentucky, and I did a search for just general Kentucky information in the 19th century, and it came up with the Sanders family. 0.33 cubic feet is about 4 inches of folders. But look at the great catalog descriptions. There are 4 screens of subjects. You only got A's through the first part of the F's here on this screenshot. But look at the detail. This collection includes letters, recipes, legal instruments for this particular family of Shelby and Hart County, Kentucky, including, tells you what it includes. The collection also includes letters and documents from these other families of Bourbon County, including an 1894 diary of James Hall of Paris, Kentucky. So there's actionable items for us, actionable information in the actual description provided to us. I can get lost for hours. I know I'm a nerd. I know I'm a history geek, but I can get lost for hours in databases like this. No, they're not Ancestry. And no, they're certainly not Amazon or Google, but they give us actionable information. And then in the top part of many of these robust records, it tells you where it's at. It's in the Filson Club in Louisville, Kentucky. And it gives you the address for their online catalog where you will likely be able to get even more information. So National Union Catalog. Archive Grid is a product of OCLC, which is a big information aggregator. They do a lot in the space. They blow up a lot in the space as well. But Archive Grid, it's another way to search for manuscripts that complements NUTMUC, the National Union Catalog of Manuscript Collections. And you can search by state if you want to, and you can take a look at recent editions. So the Ohio Genealogical Society has put some more manuscripts on there. And this Georgia College here has put, at the very bottom, LaGrange College has put more information on. And I just did a screenshot of one of their new items, sort of new, 2016. And this is what a finding aid looks like. Again, you're not seeing the actual manuscript, but you're seeing enough information for you to make an intelligent decision about whether or not you should pursue that by querying the organization. The Catalog of United States Government Publications, this will make your head explode. This will make you pull out whatever hair you have left on your head. For me, not much. So it's not too much of a risk for me to use it because I don't have much hair left to pull out. I say facetiously with a big smile on my face. The United States government has published so many documents on everything. I mean literally everything. So farming in a war zone, the effects of vitamin C on cebus monkeys, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you might say, well, Curt, that just sounds awful. Well, why would I care about vitamin C on cebus monkeys or farming in a war zone? Well, we probably don't care about that. But the thin slice of United States government publications that deal with doing the history of a location, that deal with finding more information about our ancestors' occupations and who trappers and settlers and government agents were in a particular area, that can be found in United States government publications. It takes a lot of playing, a lot of time of practicing to get good at the catalog of US government publications, but it's an access. It's a key to so much that we really can't afford to ignore it. And this is just one example. I did a broadcast search so I would find something quickly on World War I. We have a lot of information on World War II. Sometimes we forget about World War I. They have a 64-page, as you can see where my cursor is toward the top of the screen here, the 64-page publication, the U.S. Army campaigns of World War I. They have some nice photographs. Of course, you know I'm a citation analysis nut, so I'm happy. Here's a bibliography of more sources I can check. The Library of Congress and the National Archives coming on right after them. These are large websites, and they're put together by a federal government entity. So they have an amazing amount of information. They're really, really hard to use. It takes almost a librarian to successfully use them. And I'm not telling you that to scare you. I'm just saying be patient, give yourself grace. It's a great insomnia buster again. Maybe you just don't have enough. When you wake up in the middle of the night, you just don't have enough energy to focus your thoughts. You really don't have enough time to put together a research plan. Just go to one of these big mega sites and just start playing around. There is so much there. So this is the Library of Congress's main page. Along the bottom, you have a link to their catalog, their digital collections, and a link for their researchers. Most federal government entities are somewhat pejorative in their sound about how they instruct library patrons, particularly genealogists, to use their site. It sounds a little finger wagging, but again, we have lemons, we make lemonade. So we use that advice to the best of our ability to gain better access to their website. And just a couple more screenshots. They have millions upon millions of documents in digital collections. Typically, they're collections of the rich and famous, of the more well-known, but not all of them are. So look for them. What is the A.P. Schmidt Company archive? If we had a nice little period of time that we could play it, we would do that. We would play and see what all is there. What is this Abraham Lincoln collection? Many entities around the country have amazing Lincoln collections, including the Allen County Public Library right here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. What's this collection? What makes it special? Chronicling America, there are 21 million plus actual newspaper pages available to read, to download, to search through on the Library of Congress's website. It's kind of hard to navigate your way to this place. So you can just Google Chronicling America, and we'll take you right into this portion of their website. But you can also find it under digital collection, doing some other searching through the website. And then the National Archives. Oh my goodness, we can't ignore this. Difficult to use, very, very difficult to use. use this square up here, researching, excuse me, our records. If we click on that, we come to research our records. Here's about their catalog, using their catalog, search tips, catalog newsletter, catalog guide for genealogists. Are they focused on their catalog? Absolutely. Why? One, because they want to be helpful, and two, because their catalog is a bear to use. It's not intuitive, and it's really made for librarians and archivists, not for patrons. Online research tools, pay attention to that. And then they actually have a page, the National Archives Catalog Guide for Genealogists and Family Historians. So they put together what they intend to be a helpful page for us. It can be a little instructive sounding, but again, we mine it for what info we can use to leverage access to actionable data. I hope that makes sense. Digital Public Library of America, oh my goodness. Notice here, 51 million plus images, text, videos, and sounds from across the United States. Yet another, I know you're tired of hearing me say this, but yet another insomnia buster. Play around with this site if you're sleepless some night to see how you can most effectively use it. They have been all over the map as far as what their mission is, and they're still in search of a mission. So who knows how long their funding is going to last? They're always asking for more money, but they've had a lot of libraries and organizations contribute to their database here. And why not play? Why not see what's available? So if we'd scroll down the screen, we'd see ways that we can search. I just searched a broadcast search for the War of 1812. That's a pretty lousy search because it's too broad. And notice it returned almost 500,000 results. But it returned results that I wanted because I wanted to show you that for whatever reason, why these particular case files were picked, I don't know. But there is a War of 1812 case file for a private. And if you click on that entry, you would get access to all 66 pages of this particular veteran's case file. So it's pretty amazing. Now, can we depend upon it for all War of 1812? No. In fact, they got this from Fold 3, which has a good majority of the pension records for the War of 1812. But here's one that popped up on DPLA. And finally, the place that some people, I guess, love to disparage. Some of us love to hate. We love it and we hate it all at the same time. I always grimace a little bit when someone says, oh, well, they just put their family history together by Googling it. Well, that's not a bad thing necessarily. If it's all that one does, one could poke holes in that strategy. But Google is a powerful search tool, and we should not shy away from using it. I know early on, decades ago, early in technology really becoming so important, so consequential in the genealogy space, people would talk disparaging and look disparagingly at those young people using Google or Google. Well, you know, you can't find everything on Google. That is correct. You still can't find everything on Google. But OMG, oh my goodness, if we didn't have Google to use, and if we don't use Google, we're missing a lot. Google search bots comb the web and index consequential material that we might otherwise be hard-pressed to find. Let's embrace Google. Google's a wonderful tool. Google can help us translate documents we find in another language. And again, Google can help us discover. So if we're going to do reasonably exhaustive research, we need to hone and sharpen our use of this research tool. I wanted to end with this because I still catch people criticizing, looking down at those when they say, well, how did you know that was there? Well, I Googled it and I found this entry and it pointed me here. Well, kind of like the way I ended last week, talking a little bit about Wikipedia. You know, Wikipedia for some is of the devil. No, it's not. It's a tool that we can use. Can it bring us garbage? Absolutely. So can Google. But it's a tool we can use to get at more information because, as Steve Rockwood told us, all means all. And to do reasonably exhaustive research, we need to look for it all and to have strategies for finding it all. I want to thank you for joining me this afternoon for a little longer period than I originally intended, but I hope you found it at least in some small way useful. I hope some of you found it as a revitalization of your fervor and your energy to do reasonably exhaustive research, reasonably exhaustive search, reasonably exhaustive research. Let's commit to finding our family stories because they do impact the lives of our descendants. And what an awesome thing. What is the best gift we can leave to our descendants is our family's stories that we have found and illustrated with documents and records. Enjoy the rest of the day. If you ever have insomnia, now you have some non-medical ways of dealing with that insomnia that might put a smile on your face and a spark in your brain. And look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.